Welcome to the Late Night Race Review. After 24 rounds, it's Lando Norris who takes his first World Championship in 2025. It's the promised land for Lando.
Lando, this is Zach from McLaren. Is this the World Champion hotline? You did it!
Thank you.
Awesome!
Woo! Thank you guys. Oh my god. You made a kid's dream come true. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Thanks for everything. You deserve it. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. Thanks for everything. I'm not crying.
Don't forget to support the podcast by hitting those like, follow and subscribe buttons.
Welcome on into the Late Night Race Review. My name is Aidan Scott, and joining me this evening for our final coverage of the F1 2025 season is Isidro Gonçalves and Damien Scott. Chaps, how are you doing this evening after that hard-pounding finale?
It was nice. It was a nice race. Good.
And what about you, Damien?
Yeah, good. Early start for me, 5 a.m. start. So, yeah, that was an interesting one. But yeah, last race of the season. It always comes around way quicker than you think. But yeah, that's another season done.
Yeah. No, well, look, that's good to hear, chaps. Good to hear that you're both keeping well. And yeah, Damien, definitely a different start to the weekend for you this weekend. You kind of felt what we went through when it came, well, actually what I went through when it came to Vegas. Nobody else was up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. It was just me.
That's terrible for your one race a season that you can get up early.
I know. Now, don't worry, folks. As I mentioned last week, this might be our final episode of the F1 season, but it's not our last episode of the year. We'll be back in the next few weeks, or maybe the next week or two, with our 2025 season wrap-up episode. So if you're still looking for your F1 fix, you still have us pretty much for another week or so. But with that being said, folks, we finally made it. Abu Dhabi, we're here. We made it to the final race of the season. I can't believe we've been doing this for, 24 episodes. Absolutely crazy. We all got our Christmas wish this early and got a season that brought the Drivers' World Championship down to the final race of the season. However, a lot of other people believe that the Drivers' Championship should have been wrapped up in a nice little bow maybe a few races ago. But nonetheless, if you've read the title of today's episode and you can see the thumbnail over on YouTube, well, you guessed it, Lando Norris is now our 2025 F1 World Champion. What a race, chaps. Or should I say, what a season. A race with no safety cars. Well, actually, sorry, apologies. There was only one safety car that appeared, but that was to pick up all the moisture on the track from all of the Lando Norris haters as they watched him become world champion. But I've never had my butt cheeks clenched as hard as I had in my life. But oh my god, what a race that was. That was an incredible race from start to finish. I was even talking to Isidro before we started recording this. I was just dreading the build up to this entire race all morning. I just wanted it to be over and I just wanted to know who the champion was. But don't worry, folks, we'll unpack all of the action and drama in just a few moments. But before we jump in, we do have a bit of F1 news to cover. Firstly, and onto the news that we've been eagerly waiting to hear since the dawn of time, it looks like Yuki Tsunoda will be leaving Red Bull and becoming a reserve and test driver for the organisation, and replacing him will be Isaac Hadjar in 2026. Such a shame, another potentially great one lost to the second Red Bull seat. And no, I don't mean Yuki, I'm talking about Isaac Hadjar. Rest in peace, brother. But then, as a result of that, on the Racing Bull side of things, Arvid Lindblad will be making his F1 debut and moving up from F2 alongside Liam Lawson, wrapping up the entire grid for 2026. There's so many questions, so many theories to unpack with this bit of news, but we'll make sure to cover all of that in our 2025 wrap-up episode, so definitely make sure to stay tuned for when that releases. Anyway, folks, we need to talk about qualifying. It was probably, when it came to qualifying, I have to say this was definitely the session that everyone in the world tuned into, as this was either make or break for the top three title contenders. But look, kicking it off with Q1, even with the title on the line, it was fairly touch and go for Lando Norris in Q1, as his lap times, they were starting to become a little bit, touch and go. Like they were kind of dropping down, putting him into maybe what was a P6 or P7, making the McLaren pit wall a little bit nervous, as he was looking at possibly dropping down even to the knockout zone at one stage. But he did finally make it into Q2 along with Piastri and Verstappen comfortably getting through as well. But then I think probably the main talking point before we go into the Q2 and Q3 and stuff like that is Hamilton. God, this was just another shite weekend for Hamilton. Out in Q1 again, 3 consecutive knockouts. Guys, before we move on any further, we do need to quickly talk about this. When it comes to Hamilton, look, the question I want to throw to you there, obviously, yes, look, being in Formula 1, that's the sport to be in. It's the top sport in the world for motorsport and all that kind of stuff. But like, you know, just even looking at Hamilton over the last 3 races, in Vegas, it was just awful. I think even in Brazil, he tried his best. Like, he did get up the grid and stuff like that. But then from like Vegas onwards, it's just been this absolute spiral of misery and despair for Hamilton. Will he return, guys? Like, this is the question I want to ask. Do you think he actually will return? Or what do you think is next for Lewis Hamilton? Damien, I'm going to throw it to you first. What do you make of Hamilton's situation? 3 consecutive knockouts for a 7-time world champion.
Yeah, it was always going to be a tough season for him. You know, just getting used to the car. You thought he might have done that within, 10 races, maybe half the season, something like that. And yeah, it seems that he actually had a better first half of the season. There's obviously some stuff going on behind the scenes at Ferrari. Both Leclerc and Hamilton are down on their points tally from last season. I think Leclerc is about 115 points less versus 2024, and the second seed, if we take Sainz from last season, Hamilton scored 134 points less for the other Ferrari seat. So overall, 254 points less versus 2024 for the team. So is the car worse than last year? Is there issues within the team that are making it a difficult situation for both drivers? I think there's many things that are going on. I think Hamilton just seems to be, he seems to be getting the worst of the situation. Hard to know how he picks himself up, but he'll be back next year for sure. There's no two ways about it. I think the new regulations coming in, the new era, will probably suit him a bit better than the current regulations have. So I don't think he's a quitter. But if he has another season like this, then yeah, there's definite questions to ask, I think. For sure, definitely. And Isidro, look, I'm going to throw this over to you as well. On the flip side of that, when you kind of compare Norris, my head is just focused on Lando Norris for this episode. When you compare Charles Leclerc to Lewis Hamilton, I mean, you see there's a massive difference there. There really is. Like, where the season is over, it's finished. We have all the results. We've seen all the tallies and the results and everything like that. And it's well past the stage where we can say, learning to get to grips with a new car and being in a new organization and all this kind of stuff. We've had the 24 odd races now, and there's a massive difference between Leclerc and Hamilton. But again, I'll throw the same question over to you. Do you think he will return? And if he won't, or if he does, at the same time too, what is the next steps for Hamilton?
I think he'll come back. This season, it was a brand new team, a lot of new people to work with. Probably there was a few issues with the staff itself. It seems that for 2026, Lewis wants to refresh and bring some people in and take some people out. So he definitely wants to do some changes. So I'm confident that he will come back in 2026. This year was just to forget and to adapt. And to be fair, he was only over 100 points difference between Leclerc. That has been with Ferrari for 7 years, and 100 points is not that much considering that Lewis has his fair share of unlucky throughout the season. But yeah, I think 2025 is to forget, and he will come back in 2026. Show us that he's 7-time world champion.
Yeah, that's very true. I you know, to be honest, I think I'm probably looking at this through the lens of somebody who just kind of says to himself, well, look, you know, he's been in the sport for how long now, since 2007 or 8 or whatever it's been now, and he's been through so many different series of regulations. And you know, I know obviously for Mercedes at the start of these regulations, it became very, very clear from the get-go that Mercedes had a very difficult time getting to grips with these ground effect cars. And I think Lewis Hamilton, you know, going through that struggle with Mercedes, he was always on the back foot. Like even going into 23 and 24, like, yeah, he had a few good races and he got a few podiums and stuff like that, but not enough to kind of say, well, you know, oh yeah, he was still good enough in this series of regulations. But you know, you're totally right. It probably is just a thing that, yeah, look, first season of Ferrari, just reset going into 2026. Everyone's starting from a fresh, brand new blank page next season. Everyone needs to get to grips with these new series of regulations. But hopefully, you know, going into 2026, he can obviously get onto a good sort of momentum with whatever Ferrari do produce with their car in 26. And hopefully it's not just another repeat of what we've seen at the start of 2022 when it came to all of his issues with Mercedes. But again, look, watch this space. I don't want to see him go. I really don't want to see him go. But, you know, at some stage, you do have to sort of say enough is enough. Definitely a statement that Fernando Alonso doesn't like to hear. But anyway, moving on with Q1, wrapping up Q1, we had Hamilton, Albon, Hülkenberg, Gasly, and also Colapinto out. Yeah, definitely no points for Mr. Colapinto this season at all. And I continue to say, why is he there? But anyway, that's a whole kind of conversation in itself. We'll leave for our little wrap-up episode. But moving on into Q2. Q2 was definitely a little bit different, and obviously speaking about Mercedes, we definitely seen some great times by George Russell. He was holding on to P1 there for a while until everyone swapped over tyres and went out for their last run. They went on brand spanking new fresh soft tyres. But then also as well, we seen Norris, who picked up the pace. Obviously, you know, again, one of the title contenders wanting to get into Q3 and get up to the top of the pack. Definitely picked up some good lap times throughout Q2, and then finally made it into Q3. Also as well, Mr. Yuki Tsunoda, definitely a person who's going to come up a lot in this episode. He also made it into Q3. Charles Leclerc, again, speaking about him again, look, you know, again, Isidro, I know what you're saying there, definitely. And then also Damien made a good point there as well, you know, when it came to, you know, Charles being in the team for so long compared to Hamilton and the difference in points and everything like that. Charles Leclerc, he did make it into Q3. And then finally, to wrap up Q2, we had Stroll, Antonelli, Liam Lawson, Sainz, Berman, all out of Q2. Then finally, moving on into Q3, this is where the shootout happened. This is where all of it mattered, because everyone's eyes were on Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, and Oscar Piastri. So yeah, this was definitely an exciting one. But when it came to Q3, I think overall, when it came to the lap time produced by Max Verstappen, there definitely was a bit of an intervention from Yuki Tsunoda with that one. Yuki Tsunoda definitely helped out Max Verstappen in a big way. He gave him a massive tow up the back straight just before you go into the Marina Hotel Complex section, which then definitely put Max into P1. Definitely a good place to start anyway for any race, but obviously for the title decider. But then it ended up being with Lando Norris in P2, Oscar Piastri in P3, George Russell in P4, and Leclerc in P5. So yeah, definitely an interesting qualifying session. And of course, look, all of our eyes were set for Sunday for today. We were all excited to get up. I know everyone was excited to see this race. As I said here a little bit earlier on, I was dreading this race. The nerves I had. As I said, my butt cheeks have not been clenched as hard as they had in their entire life going into this race, because oh my god, when those 5 lights went out, the sweat that was pumping from my head was unbelievable. I couldn't look away. I was like, oh my god, please nobody crash. I don't want it to happen. I want to see some good action. But going into the start of the race here, it was a great start by everybody, but unfortunately, George Russell managed to slip down to P6 on lap 1 as he got a little bit bogged down with a little bit of wheel spin, and then of course he dropped down there behind Charles Leclerc and then also Fernando Alonso. And then also on lap 1, going into the the second sort of back straight just before the Marina complex, Oscar Piastri managed to get by Lando Norris on lap 1. And I think at that stage, one of the things that a lot of people were kind of looking at going, okay, well, this is where it's decided. Lap 1 is going to dictate now, obviously, what's going to go ahead for the remainder of the race, because again, you had Verstappen in P1, then you had Piastri in P2, and then you had Lando in P3. Now, behind him again, we had the likes of Charles Leclerc. And the thing about it was that, like, you know, obviously we've seen the Ferrari. It hasn't obviously it hasn't been a great evolution of the Ferrari car from last year. This season of the Ferrari, the SF25, has just been absolutely shocking. So I think a lot of people kind of thought to themselves, I don't know, I think that's kind of it. The race is sort of done, but it was a different story as we went on into the race. So, kicking it off with our first team, because look, they are the team that we need to talk about in this episode. We do need to talk about McLaren. So, with McLaren, first of all, this is the thing that I was a little bit sort of nervous about going into this race. Obviously, we've talked about this all season long. We've talked about papaya rules, team orders from McLaren. Would they actually play a factor going into the final race? A lot of people, including myself, was hoping that this wouldn't be the case. We wouldn't get any intervention from McLaren. But obviously, we had the sort of the comments from Zach Brown and a few others from McLaren saying, well, look, you know, if it gets to a stage in the race where we kind of know how it's going to go, then we'll kind of make that decision and we'll kind of say, yeah, look, this is what we're going to do. We'll throw out something. Definitely something that it definitely irked me in the wrong way. I'll just say that much. But of course, with that being said, we had the team coming across the radio. I think it was like lap maybe 9 or 10, just when I think Max Verstappen, he was talking about graining on his tires and he was having a little bit of difficulty there. McLaren came across the radio and said to Oscar Piastri, now is the time to push, to go after Max Verstappen. So guys, we have a ton of points to cover about McLaren here, but this is the first point I want to ask you about, okay? So, you know, hearing that radio message coming across, for the casual viewer or the casual listener to this episode, you'll think to yourself, okay, well, they're just telling Oscar to go after Max to try and overtake him and to try and take that position and, you know, obviously try and win the race or whatever. But in my mind, thinking back to all of the situations that we've had throughout the season, including like Monza and all this kind of stuff with team orders and repercussions and all this kind of stuff, there was definitely a hidden message in there from my own opinion. And I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one, but when they said to Oscar, you know, now's the time to push to go after McLaren, in my mind, all that I heard was push as much as you can to get by Verstappen, wear down those tires, because we want you to be able to defend for Lando Norris. I really feel that was the only team order that McLaren threw in there, and I think that was the deciding factor. Damien, I'll ask you real quick. Do you think that was the case, or do you think it's completely different? Do you think it was just a simple go after Max and see what you can do?
Yeah, I think it was just go after Max. No matter what was going on in this race, they both McLaren guys wanted to win the race themselves, right? So Piastri, the only chance he had of taking the title really was of him winning, and then something happening to the other two. So it was in his advantage to come P1. Same for Lando. So I didn't look too deeply into that message. You know, that was their goal of this race, was to overtake Max or stay as close as they could to him for later in the race, so that, you know, they don't really get undercut or there's no issues if it gets dicey near the end and certain permutations come into play. So at that point, you know, I think they were just racing as such. If there ever was a race for papaya rules or papaya team orders, this was the one to do it, right? So there was a championship on the line. Both drivers could win it. And again, depending on whatever situation arose throughout the race, I don't think they'd have any issue with, you know, throwing out a radio call to make sure that one of the two drivers got the title, whichever way it worked out. So yeah, I had no issue with that. Say other calls during the season, yeah, for sure. Definitely a little bit of a grey area when it comes to racing, but yeah, with so much on the line, yeah, it's a good idea from their perspective anyway to ensure that they manage the race. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, like I I somewhat agree with that point. I think it's just more so a case of, I know you made the statement, if papaya rules or team orders mattered at any stage of the season, this would be it. Personally, I think from a title championship standpoint, I don't agree with that, because I'm more so in the boat of let all three drivers race, and whatever happens, and then whoever ends up being the driver's champion, that is the case. Obviously, McLaren, they want one of their drivers to win the driver's championship, and they have this wild card in the middle who is Max Verstappen, and then of course it became blatantly obvious at one stage Charles Leclerc out of nowhere decided to be another wild card. But I don't agree that this is the race at all to do papaya rules or orders or anything. I think papaya rules ended. In my opinion, I think papaya rules ended once they won the constructors. That's how it should have been. And I think after that, there should have been no intervention from the team. Yes, put out the message, don't crash into each other, race hard if you want to, but none of this, Oscar, go after Max, push as much as you can, or do X, Y, and Z to defend, just go race, go and try and win it, and try and win the championship. And however you do that, do it on track. If you need to strategically do that in a way yourself, that's what separates the men from the boys in this sport, But Isidro, I think you might have a little different opinion on this one, because I know we did talk a little bit about this before we started recording tonight's episode. Do you think that radio call to Oscar, do you think that was as simple as it was, push to overtake Max, or do you think there was a hidden thing behind that? Obviously, look, we don't want to go too heavily into it and read between the lines here, but just from my own understanding and from hearing that, I just feel that was another nail in the coffin of McLaren saying, we're backing Lando for this championship.
I think that what they're saying to Piastri basically was try to put some pressure on Max, and for some reason your tires give up and you crash. That's fine, because Lando will be in P2 and he'll be the WC winner tonight. So basically, there was, in theory, there was two drivers in McLaren, but truly there was only one, and that was very clear from the beginning that Lando would win no matter what. If Oscar had to crash because his tires give up, well, tough luck.
Yeah, you see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I really feel that there definitely was that sort of hidden message in there. Obviously, Oscar is just hearing, what do I do to win this race? And that's all he's hearing. But everyone else, is kind of thinking, this is kind of just, this is just pushing it in the favor of Lando now. But anyway, moving on from that though, on lap 13, Lando eventually started complaining about graining his tires, and then on lap 17, McLaren decided to box Lando over to hards. Definitely a different story when it came to Oscar Piastri. But before we go on to Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, after he came out of the pits, he was pulling out all of the moves on that DRS train that he came out into. Oh my god, like at one stage, we kind of thought he was going to run into Liam Lawson, or Liam Lawson was going to come back and try and get him, but he was getting by Antonelli, he got by Alonso, he just got by a load of people to fight for this championship, and I love to see that from Lando Norris. I wish we could have seen more of that throughout the season, because it really shows what kind of driver he is. But then moving on to lap 23, probably one of the most controversial moments in the entire race, which I think a lot of Lando Norris haters and Max Verstappen fans are going to cling on to for dear life until the end of time. We know we've got a ton of Lewis Hamilton fans that have clung on to the 2021 shenanigans for as long as they have. This is going to be the deciding thing that a lot of those fans cling on to. On lap 23, Yuki was given the message from Red Bull to obviously try and hold up Norris as best as he could. Obviously, team orders were coming into play, and Max was the only one in the team that had the chance of winning the World Championship. We've seen it with Checo in the previous season. But on lap 23, I think Yuki, he took the message a little bit too seriously. Instead of trying to hold him up, I think at one stage he was literally trying to kill Lando Norris, because on that back straight, just there before obviously when you got the DRS on Yuki Tsunoda. Now, this is the thing. That move by Yuki Tsunoda, I like Yuki as a driver. I think he's underrated. I think there's definitely a lot in store for Yuki Tsunoda, be it in F1 or in other motorsports championships, whatever it might be. But this move by Yuki Tsunoda was one of the worst awful driving moments that I have ever seen someone try to do. He literally tried to kill Lando Norris down that back straight. One of the rules in F1, regardless of how you look at this, one of the rules in F1 is that you can only make one defensive move across the racing track in order to defend your move going into the next corner or the next apex or wherever it might be. Yuki Tsunoda was just going, do you know what? I'm going to move left, I'm going to move right, I'm going to move left, I'm going to move right. Where am I going to go now? Oh, I'm going to try and run you off the track. That was absolutely idiotic. It was a brain-dead move by Yuki Tsunoda. His emotions got the better of him. He took the message a little bit too literally. Guys, what do you make of that whole situation there? Obviously, on lap 30, he got that very well-deserved 5-second penalty. In my own opinion, it was very well-deserved. But Isidro first, what did you make of that move?
I think that if you want to fire someone and you still want him to do some work on a Thursday, don't fire on a Monday. Because asking Tsunoda to do anything, and he's like, so if I don't do it, do I still get the job? So they should have do the announcement on the end of the race, not on that week, because he has no... why should he comply with the rules if he's already fired?
Yeah.
But anyway, thing is about the move that he got the 5 seconds is that if he got the 5 seconds penalty, then Norris should also have the penalty, because in the cooldown room when they are showing the highlights, we could see Norris overtaking Tsunoda with a car outside the whole lines, and yet nothing happened. So yeah, Yuki deserved 5 seconds for that, but then again, Norris had an option to not overtake over the white lines, and in the past Hamilton got 5 seconds penalty, or even worse for that. I think it was in Mexico or something. Anyway, I think Yuki should have just drop everything instead of staying as a test driver or reserve driver. Just go to Super Formula, for instance. his skills will be better used in Super Formula.
Just go to Destruction Derby or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I will say one thing, Mr. FIA. I was actually looking this up after the race, and I was looking at the report. That's right. I was reading reports, folks.
Look at you learning to read.
Look at me learning to read. Trying to read through this agenda for this episode is very, very difficult in itself. But I was reading through the reports. So the thing about it is, right, so understandably, yes, if Yuki had made the move once and Lando Norris had gone off the track and overtaken him, then yes, both of them would have received a 5 second penalty in the sense of, you know, Yuki pushing him off track and then Lando Norris overtaking. But it was the fact that Yuki had made an illegal move after the first move. So he moved once, then he moved twice, and then he pushed him out of the track. So it was because of the second illegal move. That's why there was no further investigation, because of the fact that Lando, he had to take avoiding action off of the track instead of crashing into the back of Tsunoda. He had to do avoiding action going off track. Now, yes, people can say, oh, well, he could have just slowed down and stopped. Look, at the end of the day, you try going 260 million miles an hour and have this tiny little blip in the corner of your eye that you're trying to avoid and come back to me and say, oh, well, he could have done this and could have done that. But the fact of the matter is, because he made that illegal move, that's why there was no further investigation for Lando. That's why Yuki still received that 5 second penalty. If he hadn't have made that illegal move, it would have been a slam dunk, both of them 5 second penalty. Isidro.
Yeah, but that now sets a precedent down the road that you can overtake over the white lines. If you can say, oh, he was moving and braking or something, or he pushed me over the lines and that's why I overtake. So they just open a precedent.
I don't know. I don't know, Isidro. I mean, if you're trying to avoid death, I take that out anytime.
Bunch of pussies.
Especially, you watch your language. We're trying to keep this as PG as possible. Damien, would you agree with me on this one, or are you still or maybe are you in the boat that it should have been 5 seconds for both, or do you think it was just a slam dunk? Yeah, Yuki was just being Yuki.
Yeah, I think the penalties worked out the right way. Yeah, Yuki was being a little bit overzealous with his defending. He was weaving back a couple of 3-4 times maybe. And yeah, he forced Norris off. Like what do you want him to do? Just crash into the back of him. As you said, they're going 150, 180 miles an hour, whatever it is at that particular piece of the track. So yeah, I think it was fair enough. Yuki that's all he had to do in this race, was to really hold up Lando. That was his job, and it didn't last too long. And he got a penalty in the meantime. I like Yuki. He's a great character, but let's face it, he's 110, 111 Formula One races, and he hasn't done much, to be honest. He has been in a pretty middling to poor car for a few seasons with AlphaTauri, but in the last couple of years, the V car was looking good, and he came into that second seat at Red Bull, which is obviously the poison chalice. And I think actually probably in the last 5 or 6 races he was starting to show some form, so he's kind of finally getting to grips with that car, but I think a little too much too late. Let's see where he ends up. He's been linked with a couple of open seats in the IndyCar series over here in the States, so that could be an interesting move for him, maybe to team up again with Mick Schumacher, who's signed there recently. So, but yeah, let's see what happens for Yuki. But good that he's still within the sport anyway. But again, who knows with the whole Red Bull and VCarb Racing Bulls teams, like Yuki could be back in a seat within 3-4 races next year.
That's very true. I mean, look what happened at the start of this season.
Poor old Liam Lawson got two races, which I've seen in an interview, he says he doesn't even remember those races in the Red Bull. So I do like Yuki, but there's probably better drivers who are a bit more deserving of that seat, or it's their turn. He's been there for 4 or 5 seasons, so yeah, it is what it is, unfortunately.
Poor Yuki. We'll miss you. He was definitely an interesting character to say the least. I like, one of the things I loved about Yuki was always when he always got into a situation or a predicament with another driver, I was just always anticipating those radio calls, because they were always just going to be crazy, just Yuki lashing out. Like, always he would come out with like, "What the fuck, man?"
Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing, man. What do you mean, bro?
I hope somebody does a montage of his best radio calls, because that would definitely be
I love them.
Great one. Yeah.
Yuki's some of Yuki's radio calls are just absolutely incredible. Like, and you just be sitting there for the majority of it just in tears laughing, because just some of the things that he comes out with are, like, obviously not every driver comes out with the same thing. You've got a lot of cursing and swearing and all that kind of stuff. Yuki just you just got to watch some of those radio calls. He was definitely a character, and for sure we're gonna miss Yuki. So who knows? Yeah, of course. Look, he could come back within about 2 or 3 races next season. But definitely watch that space. But anyway, moving on from that whole Yuki Tsunoda and Lando Norris incident on lap 30. By lap 32, the predictions were coming across that Oscar would then eventually, once he came into pit, he would actually come out behind Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. But then by lap 38, I think the race was pretty much done at this stage, because Norris was sitting there in P3 with a comfortable pit stop over LeClerc, because again, look, LeClerc was definitely biting at the heels of Lando Norris for a good chunk of that race. But again, the whole thing with Ferrari, and especially that car and Leclerc, is that he's got great pace for all of about maybe 10 or 11, 12 laps, and then the pace just drops off, and then that's it. That's his sort of his challenge done. But he did have a good sort of pit stop advantage over Leclerc and Russell. And then, of course, look, at that stage, Verstappen was in P2 and Oscar was still in P1 on 39 lap old hard tires, because obviously Verstappen had come in and he had swapped over to I think it was the hards at that stage, I believe. But then eventually, look, when I think it was like at lap 41, near enough lap 41, Verstappen actually managed to take over the lead. He overtook Piastri on lap 41, just there again, before coming into the whole marina hotel section. But then eventually on lap 42, Oscar Piastri finally pitted, got rid of those hard tyres, and I think he moved over to mediums or something at that point. But yeah, those hard tyres were definitely screaming. And I think this is again where I kind of want to come back to the point of, you know, guys, McLaren, they left Oscar Piastri out there for 42 laps. We had a 58 lap race and he was sitting on 42 lap old hard tyres. The majority of people had come in and done, I think, maybe 1 or 2 pit stops at that stage, and Oscar Piastri was just hanging out there on lap 42 on these old hard tyres. And just, you could even see at that stage, once you've seen the gap with Verstappen and Norris kind of catching up and coming through the pack, and then eventually when Verstappen overtook him, this is where I'm kind of raising the point. I mean, going into this race, I think it was very clear that McLaren were just going, yeah, we're back in Lando on this one. Yes, for the cameras, we'll say, oh yeah, both drivers have a chance of doing this, yada yada yada. But it really feels from a strategic point of view, from very early on in the race, it just kind of seemed that Oscar Piastri was was sort of the wall in the way of Max Verstappen. That's what they were basically using him for. Isidro, do you agree with me on that one, or what do you think about that? Because I mean, I'm sorry, leaving someone on old tires that long, and then you have Max Verstappen, your title championship rival, literally overtaking you, and then they pit you. I mean, what do you make of that? Do you think that was a little bit of a bullshit call on McLaren's point?
You keep thinking that McLaren was interesting in helping Oscar in some way. That having Oscar winning the championship was never in the cards for McLaren. So
yeah,
their strategy was all about Lando. So whatever left to Oscar, he would get that.
Yeah.
If he had to pit, they will just try. They had to pit to follow the rules, but if for some reason his tire was just pull up before going to the pit, that wouldn't matter. That only means that Lando would get the P2, and that was it. So yeah. I think the truth is Oscar was never in McLaren plans.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one, Damien. Do you kind of see what I mean now about this? Like, you know, leaving Oscar out for that long. Like, come on. I'm sorry. If you were
a hard tire. They go. The pit window for the hard tire was lap 39 to lap 45, and he came in right in the middle of that on lap 42. Like, what's up with that? That's
okay. Fine. But if you look at the difference, I know obviously it's a hard tire, but you look at the difference between the medium and the hards, there was a lot of graining for a lot of drivers. They blatantly knew what they were doing there. They knew what they were doing, Damien. If you cannot agree with that one, I'm sorry. This is a huge difference of opinion we're going to have.
Not everything is a conspiracy, you know? Like,
it is, man. It is. It's aliens, dude. It's aliens.
Apart from the aliens, they started on different tires. They had different strategies going into it, which was a good thing. It was smart. You know, they started Lando on the mediums and Oscar on the hards. So yeah. Oscar was always going to go for a stint just to push as much as he could against Verstappen. So they had you know, the two strategies, and whichever one that fell into the best strategy, depending on what Verstappen did, then they had those cards in the back pocket. So I don't think there's any great conspiracy about a 42 lap hard tire for Piastri, right?
But
did it work out? Yes, it did.
Yes, but the thing about it is that it could have ended up being a case with Piastri in P1 and Verstappen in P2, because if you
shoulda, woulda,
yeah,
great strategy.
But that shoulda, coulda, woulda is blatantly obvious that it was McLaren that were favouring Lando. Hey, look, I'm happy that Lando won. I've been saying this for so long. I would have liked to have seen Lando win over Oscar. I'm more of a Lando fan than I am an Oscar fan. But when it comes to fairness, that, in my own opinion, was just such a terrible move by McLaren. It just literally felt that they were just knocking Piastri off into the back foot and saying, hey, yeah, look, we'll use you when we need you. And if we do need you, then hey, cool. But look, this is what's going to happen. It's going Lando's way. Because at the end of the day, you're saying there that, yeah, he came in right at the perfect time for like a pit stop window for the hard tires. He had a massive advantage of a pit stop over Verstappen to come in and switch over to maybe another set of hards, or possibly jump onto the mediums to try and defend that P1. But they didn't make that call. They left him out for 42 laps to allow Verstappen to come back and even overtake him and then pit him on the next lap. I mean, it was just like, it's probably going to be a difference of opinion that we're going to have in this one, but honestly, I think myself and Isidro are in the same boat of this particular point. I think it was very clear that McLaren knew who they were favouring into this race. It was going Lando's way, and I think that's how it is. But we could debate about this for so long. We'll leave that to our wrap-up episode. How about that, Damien?
What sells more T-shirts? A Constructors' Championship or a World Championship driver?
God,
right? That's where the money is. That's you gotta back your best horse when it comes to winning the Drivers' Championship. And everybody remembers that. They don't remember how many constructor titles that are.
If we go by T-shirts, I'm pretty sure there will be more people, Max Verstappen fans, buying T-shirts of Oscar than people buying Lando's.
That's the other thing.
I'm sure Lando is crying into his champagne.
He's crying into his massive driver's trophy that he just won. Safety car deployed for all of the tears. I don't know. Look, we'll leave that debate for our season wrap-up episode, because we do need to talk about that further, and we do need to talk about this whole shenanigans of Papaya rules, right? This entire season that obviously dictated how this season was going to go. But we do need to move on, because we do have other teams and topics to talk about, and of course we have a predictions game to get through. So moving on from lap 42, pretty much went back to Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, and then Verstappen, Piastri, and Norris in P1, P2, and P3. Then on lap 45, everybody, I think anyone who was not a Lando Norris fan was instantly a Charles Leclerc fan, because on lap 45, I think this is when the race really came down to what really mattered. It was the battle between Norris and Leclerc, because on lap 45, Charles Leclerc was lapping 1 second faster than Lando Norris. He was gaining massively on Lando Norris, and this would have been the decider, because if Charles Leclerc had have gotten across or had have gotten by Lando Norris, and Norris would have dropped down to P4, and it would have been Max, Piastri, Charles and Lando, the championship would have went to Max Verstappen, and he would have been a 5-time world champion. And even at one stage, Verstappen was like, oh, has Charles gotten by him yet? Or, what do we need to do? I think even at one stage, I think they were probably trying to, even throw like a quick little pit stop. So Verstappen would then sort of back up Piastri a little bit to back up Lando and give Charles a chance to get DRS. There was all these different permutations and strategies that were getting thrown out, and theories of what could happen. But everyone's eyes were on that battle. We were all loving it. We were all glued to the TV screens, and then everyone in the world felt exactly what every Ferrari fan has felt for the entire season. The pace fell off, and Charles just disappeared. The pace was shite. It was a typical Ferrari, so I don't know why anyone had hopes on Charles Leclerc getting by Lando Norris. But pretty much his pace fell off on lap 50, and that pretty much decided it. It was Verstappen in P1, Piastri in P2, and then of course Lando Norris in P3, and then finally they all crossed the line to have Lando Norris as the F1 2025 World Champion. As I said, if it was going to come down to the two drivers, I would have liked to have seen Lando win it. I'm glad he did, but at the same time too, I would have liked to have seen Max win a 5 times World Championship. I would have loved to see him win a fifth championship, mainly because of all of the stupidity that McLaren have been throwing out here all season long with these papaya rules. I would have loved to have just had that moment and seen that moment so that Max could just literally be like, hey, this is what you don't do during a world championship. If you want to win a driver's championship early, this is what you don't do. And he even said in an interview, he was like, we have gotten to where we are because of the failures of others. And that is exactly true. 2 points finishing off that race compared to Lando Norris. That just says it all. If McLaren hadn't gotten involved, we would have had a world champion, I think, definitely a couple of races ago. I think by Vegas, we would have had a world champion. Who knows? Even maybe before that. So yeah, that was McLaren. Guys, just a quick little summary of McLaren overall. Isidro, to you first. What did you make of McLaren?
McLaren, we all knew what they were doing all this season. We all knew who driver they was backing, and I would have more respect for McLaren if they hadn't come up with the papaya rule shenanigans, because they had the best car on the grid, and yes, it took the last race and some luck to get one of their drivers to win the championship.
Yeah. And Damien, just a quick little summary on that one as well. What did you make of McLaren overall?
You're talking about the season or just today?
Just today. We'll talk about their season in our next episode. Don't you worry. Just overall today. Just sum them up in a nice little bow for today's race.
I think they managed it perfectly, to be honest. They had a job to do. They had a plan and they executed, and they've got a drivers' world champion now. So they had, as I said, they had a lot of cards to play, and yeah, they played them well. So yeah, I think fair play to the McLaren management. They saw all the opportunities that they had, and they played all their cards perfectly. So yeah, fair play to them. Well done.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with both of those comments from both of you there. But moving on to a team that doesn't know how to put a plan together since I'd say probably 2004, Ferrari, because they are the next team that we're going to quickly talk about during this race. But look, this was definitely a season to completely forget for Ferrari overall. But the thing about it is that I want to quickly talk about, and Isidro, I want to get your thoughts real quick on Ferrari on this one. I mean, compared to qualifying, the Ferrari car looked completely different. Like, yes, we did talk about there that the pace did drop off from Leclerc during both stints. You know, like he was going after he was going after Lando, gaining quite, rapidly on Lando at one stage, again, as I said there, by lap 45 or whatever it was. But the car looked completely different compared to qualifying session. Like, even in a straight line, the straight line speed on the Ferrari was incredible. It really was. Like, it was putting in some good lap times, and obviously that was from Charles's point of view. But again, on the flip side of that, Lewis Hamilton, I mean, for a guy who had a absolutely shite qualifying session out in Q3, 3 consecutive Q3 exits, started off in P16, made his way all the way up to P8. And I have to say, look, that was a great way to finish the season for Lewis Hamilton with just that race alone, just like finishing off on a little bit of a high, claiming some points for Ferrari, which is good. But like, what happened? Like, compared to qualifying session and going into the race, like, obviously these cars, like, they're in Parc Fermé. I'm not trying to say that Ferrari were tinkering with the car or they did something illegal or whatever. I'm not trying to say that, but like, that was a very different car, Isidro. What happened there?
I think Ferrari was learning a few things from Red Bull, where in the past they didn't like the qualifying. They just changed the car completely, start from the pit lane and then podium. Ferrari was trying the same, of course, with not the same result. But yeah, I think Ferrari was trying to do one last thing for their drivers, give them a better car at least to look good for the final race, and it kind of did. I mean, they both finished on the points. Leclerc did more to fight the McLarens than the other drivers on the track. So I think Ferrari was just trying to save the face for the last race, basically.
No, I agree with that one, but it was just it was so strange just to see a car that just, even when you seen them what they were like in Qatar, and then even when you see them in qualifying session for Abu Dhabi, it was just they were just horrible cars then going into the race.
But it was nice to see Ferrari reacting to what they saw in qualifying and do something to change that.
They were just testing out the 2026 management team there for the race.
Probably.
You're just going to see out the back of the Ferrari garage now in Abu Dhabi all the clown wigs and noses and everything in a dumpster. It's like, oh, so that's where the 2025 team went. But yeah, definitely. Look, it was good overall to see them obviously getting some points. Again, look, I've said it a countless amount of times, and if people, think, that I'm not a Ferrari fan, Ferrari are my number one team. I love Ferrari. They're my favorite team. I love them to death, and it's just absolutely hard to talk about them in the way that I have done over this past season. But Isidro, you're probably happy that this is the last time. Well, not actually the last time we're going to talk about Ferrari, but the last time I ask you about Ferrari this season anyway.
No, it's fine. I'm not a Ferrari fan. I'm more a Williams fan, so.
So you don't mind giving them shit.
No, but even a Williams, at least I don't suffer as much as a Ferrari fan.
That's true. Ferrari fans suffer greatly. But yeah, look, moving on from Ferrari, we do need to talk about the last team that we do need to talk about. Like, obviously, the two teams that were the main focus were McLaren and Red Bull. I know there's other drivers and there's other moves that were made in the race and all that kind of stuff. But look, we could talk all about them and make this episode go on for about an hour and a half. But we do need to wrap this up in a nice little bow. And obviously, we'll talk about all of that during our wrap-up episode in the next week or two. But we do need to talk about Red Bull. I think this is definitely a season that Red Bull will gladly forget. Because obviously, look, halfway through the season, we've seen the departure of Christian Horner. Obviously, there was the switch with Yuki and Lawson. There was all of the issues with Yuki. And then obviously there was all of the issues with Max's car and all of this kind of stuff. And then going into this final race with Max Verstappen winning 3 consecutive races in Las Vegas, Qatar. And then obviously, yes, he did come in P1 here in Abu Dhabi. I think this was the moment that Red Bull just kind of thought to themselves, well, hey, look, all of our cards were burnt at every moment that we tried to, throw an ace in the hole. They were just, they throughout the entire season, they were down on their luck. But, going into this race, as I said, I would have loved to have seen Max win this. I would have loved to have seen him. Well, obviously, yeah, he won the race, but I would have loved to have seen him be a 5-time world champion. It would have been absolutely incredible to see that. But again, look, overall, when it comes to the performance of Red Bull, I think when it comes to Max, yes, fantastic start. Typical Max Verstappen start. But the thing about it was very aggressive towards Lando Norris, towards Lando Norris. He literally came across the track to completely defend that inside line. Definitely the typical Max aggression that we love to see. But from the start of the race to the end of the race, I think Max just fairly much controlled that. Obviously Oscar Piastri wasn't much of an issue when he eventually got by him on lap 45 or whatever it was, or 41, sorry. Even with the complaints that he had from his tyres graining on lap 9, all of that kind of stuff, he still really controlled that race. And then again, look, we had, Azidra has a point.
I just want to say, when you're talking about Max, now that we have a new champion, the way I compare Max and Lando is like that meme that Max is like, I'm Max in Decimus Meridius, and Lando is like, I'm Jeff. That's how I see both champions.
Quote of the day. There we go. That's the quote of the episode. Or actually, Damien had a quote there. What was your quote that you had earlier on? You threw it into the WhatsApp group. It was priceless. What did you say?
Was this about
Charles Leclerc? Yeah.
Yeah. He was buzzing around the arse of Lando Norris there. Like, what was it? Yeah, a late summer wasp around a bottle of cider.
That was it. He was like a wasp at a late summer evening around a bottle of cider. Jesus, that is brilliant. Great quotes, guys. I'm going to miss that over the next couple of months. All the quotes. But anyway, look, moving back into Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Again, yeah, look, throughout all the struggles that he was having throughout the race, he controlled that from start to finish. But again, look, on, I think it was like roughly lap 23, again, we had that issue with Yuki and Lando. Yuki definitely, trying to play the team game, even though, yes, as Isidro pointed out, They kind of threw that news that he was going, I think, a little bit too prematurely. I think they should have waited until after the race had finished. But yeah, I think it was just a case of Yuki just didn't get the memo. His unofficial response to being told just slow up Lando Norris was, okay, I'm just going to go and try and kill him. I'll do that if you let me just stay in Red Bull. But again, as I said, look, it's such a shame to see Yuki go. Definitely an underrated driver who fell victim to that second Red Bull seat. Again, look, rest in peace peace, Isaac Hadjar, next year. But then again, as I said, Max, he got by Piastri in lap 41 because, again, Piastri had been left out in the middle of the battlefield by McLaren. They just completely left him out there. And he got by him fairly easy. But yeah, look, again, you know, even with the last three races, you know, like I think obviously, you know, Max has obviously put this point out there to everybody that, you know, winning the F1 World Champion or championships and stuff like that, it's great. Everything after the first one that he won has just been a bonus. Like, this isn't something where he says, like, of course, yeah, it's in his contract to do as best as he can, but you know, for him, everything else is just a bonus. Like, he's not going out there saying, like, oh, I have to win this. Like, he's accomplished his dream. He's been an F1 World Champion. He's won loads of races. He's done what he's needed to do in F1. So it's not like, you know, this championship, him not winning it, is going to be the make or break for Max Verstappen. No, he's going to come back next season, he's going to race again, and he's going to try and win a fifth championship title. But I think, again, though, like, even with winning the last three races and only 2 points between Max and Lando, I think this just really shows how much Red Bull capitalized on the mistakes by McLaren. But then also another point I want to quickly throw to you guys, and this is the question that I think this might be a question that will be in a lot of people's minds over the next couple of months, just before we go into 2026. Do you honestly believe, or do you think that Spain back in Barcelona, that incident with George Russell when he rammed straight into the side of him, do you think that was the nail in the coffin for Max? Do you think that was the moment where he'll probably look back at this season and say, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that, because if I didn't, I probably would have had a better chance of winning this championship? Damien, real quick, over to you. What do you think that might be the case for Max?
I don't know. Like, it was a long time ago, and it was kind of well before his run, you know, to kind of get back into it. So I think you can have 10 of those incidents during a season. It could be anything. It could be, you know, a slow pit stop because of the gun not working, or, you know, somebody blocking you in the pit lane when trying to exit. You know, there's thousands of things like that could happen, and Max Verstappen is going to have some of those like the incident you're talking about. He has that little bit of rage, which we love to see every so often, and yeah, that's just racing. You know, you can't have 24 absolutely perfect races, and, you know, I think this season we've seen that with all the drivers, like Oscar, Max, and Lando have all had these, you know, rushes of blood to the head.
Yeah.
Which has cost them certain points at certain times. So it's just whatever way it ends is the way it ends. You know, you can look back at many of these situations, but I don't think at the time it was the nail in the coffin. But yeah, sure, he could have had a few more points and he could have been champion. But again, you could say that about probably 10 other races this season for him. So I'm not sure if that specific one is an issue, you know.
But real quick, though, I feel that there's a big difference between, you know, let's say a slow pit stop or somebody accidentally blocking you in a pit lane over something that you're in complete control over. That incident with George Russell back in Barcelona, that was all in Max's control. He decided what he was going to do, and he deliberately rammed into the side of George Russell, received a massive penalty, and threw him all the way down. And the fact of the matter is, like, I'll take you up on your point that you said there, like, all of these things can happen over a season, but Martin Brundle summed it up perfectly. Every single point matters. Every single point matters. And as I'm just saying here, this came down to 2 points between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. It ended up literally being 2 points between the two of them after this race. And all of those points throughout the season, when it comes to sprint races and things like that, all of those matter. Isidro, what's your opinion on this one?
I don't want to start anything, but Kimi last week, his mistake, it's those 2 points you are talking about.
Oh, you are trying to throw a massive spanner in the works there. Maybe this is a question that I should have left to our last episode. Maybe I should have left this till next week. But that's true, though. That's true. But this is where I'm kind of throwing it back to you, that, like, every point matters, and everything that, can happen over a season. But, like, the thing about it was that I think the fact that Max running into George, I think he was in a lot more control of that over Kimi losing the rear of his car. You know, like, yes, Kimi is in control of his car. He has to control his car. But I think there's a kind of a big difference there between that scenario and the Kimi scenario in Qatar. Do you agree with me on that?
I'm not sure. Like, there's 16 or 17 races that Max didn't win, right? You know, and he could have been 25 points from each of those. So I think if you go through everything analytically with a fine tooth comb, you could find loads of points over the season. And I think that's why we all love F1. We all love racing. They have these incidents or these issues or whatever the case might be, where they drop a few points here or there, or somebody gains because of it. You know, we had the double disqualification of the McLarens there in, was it Vegas?
In Vegas, yeah.
So again, that could have been season over pretty much in the previous race end. So these things happen. You can't. I don't think Max Verstappen will look back on Spain and go, "Oh, damn it, that's where I lost the championship." I don't think he cares too much, to be honest. You know, say he's 4 in the bag. Does he want another 4? I'm not sure if he's motivated for that. You know, we may see him move to another series or take some time off. You know, he's been kind of talking about those things in the past couple of weeks as well. But let's see what happens for Max. But yeah, he's definitely back next year for sure.
Yeah, no, but look, again, disappointing that he didn't win a 5th. But I think the sad reality for a lot of Max Verstappen fans, and look, I am a fan of Max Verstappen. I love him. I think he's a great driver, one of the greatest of all time. I would definitely count myself as a Max Verstappen fan. But one of the realities I think a lot of people are going to have to get used to very quickly is that going into next season, that number 1 is going to change into number 33 again. So yeah, it's obviously a disappointing thing for any driver that you back or any of your favorite sort of drivers. But just on that point there real quick, and I'm not going to get too much into it, I would love to see Max Verstappen go to something like IMSA or the World Endurance Championship. I would love to see him in that. I know he's a huge fan of endurance racing, like through all of his sim racing and stuff like that. I know he's a huge fan of IMSA as well. I would love to see him in that championship. I think it'd be great. But yeah, look folks, that was the Abu Dhabi GP. There was so many other things that obviously happened throughout that race and things that we could pick out and stuff like that. But again, this episode could go on for God knows how long, another hour if we went talking about that. But we do need to wrap this up. And of course, we will talk about more next week anyway. But look, wrapping up with our top 10 for the Abu Dhabi GP. We had Max Verstappen in P1, Oscar Piastri in P2, Lando Norris in P3, which did decide pretty much the championship with that P3 result, making him the F1 2025 world champion. Then in P4 we had Charles Leclerc. We then had George Russell in P5, Fernando Alonso putting out the moves there, getting himself into P6, with Esteban Ocon in P7, Lewis Hamilton in P8, Nico Hulkenberg in P9, and then finally wrapping up your top 10, which was something that I definitely didn't have in my 2025 bingo cards, was Lance Stroll in P10. Oh my god. That was crazy, absolutely crazy. Lance Stroll coming in P10. And then also as well, we had no DNFs. There was no safety cars, there was no DNFs. Obviously there was a few penalties that were dished out to a few drivers, but no DNFs. So moving on to our next segment, our driver of the day, our dick of the day, and our loser of the day. Damien, can you give me your final F1 2025 for this season driver of the day, dick of the day, and loser of the day?
My driver of the day was Charles Leclerc. Thought he had a great race. He was the fly in the ointment for McLaren, and he was buzzing around it. I was just like, he's going to go into the back of Norris.
Fly in the ointment.
That's going to be it. He's gone, you know. So he had a couple of chances like that. He did fall off kind of near the end. Not sure what happened to that Ferrari, but he was gaining time, and then all of a sudden he was just he plateaued, and he was about 4 or 5 seconds behind. So yeah, he had a couple of chances here and there, and he had a decent qualifying, and he was in the race wherever Ferrari got that pace from. So yeah, I thought he was driver of the day. Obviously Lando wins his world championship, but he just ran his race in P3. But if we're talking about this individual race, I think it's Charles. Dick of the day, I don't think we can look far beyond our old pal Yuki. Complete dick move, but it was funny to see. And loser of the day, I think you have to feel bad for Oscar. He had to just kind of take this one on the chin, and watch his biggest rival win the world championship. So I think it's clear that Oscar is going to be a world champion at some stage in the not too distant future. But he's going to learn from this season, and I think in particular the second half of the season where he dropped off, and he created some of his own misery in some of those races. Azerbaijan in particular, he did a bit of a crash, and there was a few other races. So yeah, loser of the day, but yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah, very sure. Definitely a future world champion. I like that. That's the thing. Any Oscar Piastri fan, don't count him out. He'll come back. He'll be a world champion someday. He will be. Isidro, for your final driver of the day, dick of the day, and loser of the day, throw it over to me.
So I agree with Damien. I also see Leclerc as driver of the day, especially he was the only one doing anything to help his friend Max. Not even Lawson is coming close second, helping Max in the race. But yeah, I think Leclerc did a fine drive with the Ferrari. But I think Ferrari was only prepared 80% of the car, because the rest of 20%, that Ferrari start losing pace and everything. So, but overall, I think Leclerc did a fine drive with the car that he got this weekend. Dick of the day, yeah, Tsunoda. His move. I'm pretty sure he had in his heart good intentions, but his delivery was awful. And yeah, it cost him 5 seconds. Loser would be Oscar Piastri. He was trying to fight for the championship, but the main rival was Zach Brown, McLaren, followed by Lando.
They were his two biggest championship rivals, was Lando and Zach Brown. It wasn't Max.
A bit over, lads. Jeez.
I know. In fairness, though, Damien, like you kind of have to look at this with a tinfoil hat on. You really do, and once you do, you will see exactly what we're talking about. And hey, look.
The championship is tainted because of McLaren actions.
It is.
Stop.
No, 100%. I totally agree with Isidro on that one. Something that I never thought I would do. Agree with Isidro when it came to McLaren orders, but I 100% agree with Isidro on that one. Again, we'll talk about this more next week, guys. We could go on for ages about this. But yeah, look, I completely agree with the both of you on that one. But I am giving my drive of the day for F1 2025 Abu Dhabi. I'm giving that to Lando Norris. I'm going to give it to him. I could have given it to Charles. Yes, he did run a great race, but he did a typical Ferrari driver thing. He had great pace for all of about maybe 5 laps, and then he just disappeared. So he gave us some action and some pressure, but I'm giving it to Lando Norris. He's the world champion, so I'm giving him driver of the day. My dick of the day, look, I haven't given it to this guy in a very, very long time, and who would I be if I didn't finish up this season with giving my old pal Mr. King Dick, Liam Lawson, my dick of the day, because he was being a bit of a dick now. That Hamilton incident that he had, and then also almost obliterating Lando Norris into the Marina Hotel section. King Dick, Liam Lawson, I'm giving it to him. No ifs, ands or buts, Damien. I don't want to hear it. Liam Lawson is getting my dick of the day. You had your dick of the day. Now you let me have my dick, all right?
Come on, Yuki has to win something this season. Come on, Yuki.
No, I'm sorry. I like Yuki. It was a terrible move. It really was. I completely agree. He is up there. He is up there in the dick area with Liam Lawson.
Move on quickly. Move on.
And then finally, my loser of the day, I'm giving it to all of the salty Lando Norris haters. As I said, safety car deployed for all of the tiers for everyone. Yeah, exactly.
No. I'm not a hater. I just I don't like the championship to be tainted. That's it.
Yeah. That's it. We're at the end of the day, look, you can have a driver that you back, and I know it's a shame when you don't see your driver winning the race or winning a championship and stuff like that, but hey, that's sport. There can only be one winner at the end of the day, and again, there's always opportunity for your driver to win it next time. That's the great thing about this sport. We're not finishing this season with the reality of, there's going to be no more Formula One ever again. It'll be back in March. We'll see how that goes. So So yeah. But yeah, look, folks, let's move on to our final segment of the day, our predictions game. This is where it all comes down. Yeah, it's been a very exciting season when it comes to our predictions game, but this is our final one of the 2025 season. I've had a lot of fun with this, guys. There's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of excitement, a lot of moments where I even thought to myself, hey, I've got enough races left to win this, but I think at this stage probably not. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, because the predictions are in, and of course with this particular episode, or these round of predictions, we threw all of our cards, or sorry, threw all of our chips onto the table, and we went all in on our predictions. So kicking it off with Dave, he had Max in P1, which he did get a point for. However, he had Russell in P2, which gave him 0 points, and then he had Piastri in P3. Very close, but no cigar. But then he did have, for his flop, he had Yuki outside the top 10, which he did get a point for. And then he had Hamilton inside the top 10. I will note that I did have this as my prediction as well, and all yous thought I was absolutely bonkers for doing this. But yeah, Hamilton inside the top 10, which gave him another point. However, we did say for our final sort of extra thing that we've added in here, which is who would then be the World Drivers' Championship. And if you predicted correctly, you would actually get 2 points. Dave predicted Max Verstappen. So unfortunately, 0 points for him there. So that gives him 3 points for this particular race. Isidro, can you throw me your predictions?
So I had P1 for Norris, P2 Piastri, and I had Kimi Antonelli for P3.
So close. So close.
Yeah.
Close.
And then I had Lawson P12, and
Where did Lawson come?
P16, I think.
18.
Oh, that's right. And you said you were going to predict exactly where they would be.
Yeah. But I got lucky. Russell P5. So that's 2 points.
That's true. That is very, very... Isidro, you were buying on the money with that one.
I should have started scoring positions sooner.
I know you could have been well further ahead. You're there just texting Toto throughout the race going, just come on, you've nothing to lose or win here. Just make him finish P5.
Yeah, help a brother out.
Help a brother out. But then your final prediction?
Of course, drivers champion would be Lando Norris.
There you
No
go.
doubt about that.
And 2 points. 2 points, which gives you 5 for this particular race. Now, for my predictions, oh boy, did I have the glass ball. That's all I'll say. Because I had Max in P1, Piastri in P2, and Lando in P3. Boom. All lovely 3 points for that. And then I had Yuki outside the top 10, and then also Hamilton inside the top 10. 5 points overall. And then if I had have used my brain and thought about this logically and looked at my predictions from last week and said, oh yeah, all that Lando needs to do now is finish in P3, I should have predicted that Lando would have been World Drivers' Champion and I could have been on 7 points. But I predicted Max Verstappen as my World Drivers' Champion, so I got 0 points for that one. But I did get 5. So
I think that's the first 5 of the season.
I think
everybody has predicted the 5 you usually go for, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. And I was like, when I seen the results and I was looking at it in the final lap, I was like, oh my God, I'm literally about to get like everything right here. I was like, oh shit, but I predicted Max as my world champion. Why did I do that? I literally threw away 2 points with that one there. Damien, what was your predictions?
I had Lando P1, Max P2, and Piastri P3, so 0 there. I had Yuki outside the top 10 for my flop, which is a point. I had Antonelli P5 for my surprise. I should have went for Russell.
Yep.
But I have Lando world champion, Norris as the champion, so there's 2 points there, which gives me 3 overall.
3 overall. So look, I think, to be honest, yeah, there isn't really any winner of this particular week's episode. Myself and Isidro were tied on 5 points, and yourself and Dave were tied on 3 points, which makes absolutely no difference in the driver's standing, I think, or not the driver's, the prediction standing. But we will look at that because we do need to crown a champion for this season. So I'll start from the bottom and I'll work my way up. Just add the anticipation and to give him his moment in the spotlight. Oh dear God. Isidro, you finished on 33 points for this season. I finished on 36 points. Dave finished on 39. And splitting themselves with just 1 point is Damien on 40 points in P1. So congratulations, Damien. You are the 2025 predictions champion.
Thanks very much. I'm going to open the champagne now just as we finish here.
Exactly. Or rosewater, maybe. I don't know. As they like to use.
Cup of tea, more likely. It's lunchtime for me now. Jesus,
don't throw that cup of tea over you, whatever you do. Like, that's like 3rd degree burns right there.
Yeah. Good point.
That's it. But yeah, guys, that was a ton of fun. I mean, when you look at that there, only a point between Dave and Damien, and I know there's 3 points between myself and Dave. Even if I had have guessed correctly when it came to my prediction on Lando Norris, I know I picked Max, I should have picked Lando. I still just would have been a point behind Dave. Isidro, any thoughts? Any comments?
I should have started calling positions sooner. It was definitely working out. I mean, we only finished 3 points, so yeah, coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But guys, it has been an absolute blast doing this all season. Just like looking down here through the whole table and everything like that. I mean, there was definitely a few weekends that were deciding factors in the table. But look, overall, there can only be one who is the champion or the winner. And Damien, you have taken the old crown for 2025. But yeah, we'll see what happens next season. We're definitely you are now the hunted.
I had a few weeks there around Canada and Austria and Silverstone where I was like 1.0, 1.0,
yeah.
And I was like, oh, here we go. It's all over. I was having my Oscar Piastri moment, but yeah, a strong finish in the end with a bit of a tussle with Dave there. But yeah, it was good fun. It was very close in the end.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I mean, there's even a couple of weekends for myself there that were just absolutely shocking. So I will take this weekend as a victory in itself. You know, I'll take the runners-up prize. I know Dave technically takes the runner-up prize, but I'm going to take the medal for I predicted everyone correctly and where they would finish medal. Yeah. But yeah, look, we have next season to do this all over again and see who our 2026 champion will be. So yeah, folks, that was the Abu Dhabi GP. It was an absolute blast of a season. We had a ton of fun talking about F1 all season long, since the beginning of March right through here to December. It's been an absolute blast, and yeah, it's there's definitely been a lot that we've learned this season, and I know obviously this is the last season of this set of regulations, these ground effect cars that we have, and going into 2026 we're going to have a brand new set of regulations with they're not going to be ground effect anymore. It's going to be flat floor, loads of different changes coming. Again, check out our video over on YouTube. We actually have a whole regulations 2026 explanation video that you can check out and learn a little bit more about it if you're a little bit curious on what's on the horizon when it comes to next season. But look, before we wrap things up, guys, I need to say to you directly, I've had an absolute blast doing this. Isidro, myself and Damien are the newcomers to the late night race review. Have you enjoyed your time with us this season, the newbies, or would you say, hey, let's get rid of you guys and go back to the old crew?
No. It was very good. Had good fun throughout the season.
That's good. Yeah, no, I had an absolute blast doing this. You know, like obviously for our listeners and stuff like that, they hear the episode, they see the things go up online, but there's a lot of work that goes into doing these episodes each week. Like even when we do have a little bit of a break as well, like, you know, we're still kind of talking about, okay, well, what's going to happen for the next season? We're still getting things prepared. There's a lot of stuff we do behind the scenes, getting all of this together and stuff like that, and it's been a ton of fun. It really has. And of course, you know, with Damien all the way over in the States, waking up at all, you know, God knows what hours in the morning, or, well, for the majority of the time for us, when it's been the afternoon for you, it's been us who's been recording in the evening. But yeah, no, like, thanks so much for your commitment getting up at the times that you have, Damien.
Yeah, well, look, I'll be getting up to watch them anyway. I think most of the European ones are about 6 a.m. for me, so it's not too bad.
Yeah.
With a few younger kids, you don't get lions anymore, you know, so. I'm up anyway. I might as well watch it and then have a chat with you guys later on in the day.
Yeah, of course. But look, we'll obviously talk a little bit more about this because, again, as I've mentioned probably a countless amount of times throughout today's episode, and as to not sound like a broken record, don't worry, this is not our final episode for 2025. We will have a 2025 season wrap-up episode on the way pretty much within the next week or two. Date and time to be decided. We'll make sure to plan that out as soon as we're finished here. But of course, we'll talk a little bit more about that in our next episode. But for this evening, folks, thank you so much for joining me, Damien and Isidro. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy afternoons to talk about the Abu Dhabi GP. It was an absolute blast.
Yeah, thanks guys. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, until next time, folks, we don't actually have a race at all until March now. We will see you for our 2025 season wrap up. But look, of course, tell us your thoughts below in the comments. What did you think of today's race? What did you think of the season overall? Tell us your thoughts on, certain drivers. Are you happy that Lando has won the World Drivers' Championship? Are you sad to see Max not win a fifth? What are your thoughts overall on everything that unfolded? We would love to hear what your opinions are. And of course, look, if you did enjoy today's episode and you love what we do here and all that good stuff, definitely make sure to click that like button or click the heart button whatever platform you're listening to us on. And of course, look, if you want to listen to more and you want to follow all of our content, definitely make sure to click the subscribe button and follow button and all that kind of good stuff anyway. So yeah, for 2025, until we talk to you in the next week or so, have a great afternoon, evening, or whatever time of day you're listening to this, folks, and we'll see you all for the 2025 season wrap-up episode. Adios.